America, land of the free markets. America, home of the brave investors. America, indeed, a playground for opportunity. And it is this opportunity, precisely this opportunity, these opportunities, why our business exists. We discover underserved, untapped, undervalued, underdog companies. We invest in these companies. We bring value not only to ourselves, to those same companies, but also to our clients, our investors. Ladies and gentlemen, there's an opportunity by the name of grant systems. Ladies and gentlemen, this opportunity is calling. Ladies and gentlemen, today, myself, Baxter, my colleagues Aiden and Kirsten are going to tell you how and why you need to answer this call. Start with our value proposition. Our recommendation to secure an active investment role in grant systems allows Skycomish to deliver untapped and unbelievable value to its stakeholders by managing its reputation and potential. That's a lot of words. Let's get into how we're going to do that. So the problem identification. This is going to be an overview of our entire presentation. Our primary issue to be identified is that there's a need to enhance value to our stakeholders without compromising the integrity of our portfolios. I mentioned there's an opportunity in grant systems. This opportunity presents possible reward, and as we all know, possible reward comes with risks. We're going to talk about how to manage those risks. A secondary issue that we identified is precisely that, managing controls and accounting issues that are present. And our critical insight for this morning is that Skycomish must obtain an active leadership role in grant to manage and mitigate its risk exposure. So this is our internal analysis. We're going to look at strengths and weaknesses of grant systems internally. So first, our strengths. It's very agile. It's responded to market pressures, market changes, industry advancements in the past. In 2001, it started with a very different outlook than it has right now. It started in more the hardware sector, and now it's looking to move into cloud computing. It has high growth as well as consistent profits among all its diversified segments. And it has an acquisition strategy that is congruent with its vision, its mission, its values. That's been the same over the course of its entire existence. Now, there are some weaknesses in grant we've identified. Most notably is going to be its current ownership in Melco. We'll get into that a little bit later on in our presentation. But just know that Melco, there has been some litigation issues with them, which is exactly why we're presented here to discuss them today. I'm going to get into the external analysis right after my main takeaway, which is that Grant has a very good strategy, it's excellent track record. However, it has a trend of taking on greater risk. I mentioned its strength has a diversified portfolio. However, with new leadership in place, Grant is planning on expanding its most stable and most profitable segment, which we could see more narrower segments in the future. Now, our external analysis is going to look at opportunities and threats within Grant's operating industry, which is the tech sector. And these opportunities and threats are going to tell us how, if we do decide to invest in Grant, how we might be affected in the future and which avenues we might like to explore going forward. So the opportunities are, the synergies exist. Right now, Melco, its largest ownership investment, currently uses value-added resellers, whereas Grant has these chains and these resources in place that it will not need to use these value-added resellers. And we see this as an opportunity for Grant to capitalize on the synergies that exist between the investment and Melco itself. There are pattern recognition for AI software with cloud-based solutions. These are opportunities within this technology industry that can be capitalized on. The threats in this industry, however, are market volatility. Specifically with grant systems, we notice a high correlation between their own risk and the market risk, which indicates a high beta value. Another threat is the lawsuits and public image. I mentioned that with Melco and their large investment. There is possibility that these litigations and these lawsuits come to fruition, which may tarnish the company's reputation, and should we decide to invest, could tarnish our reputation as well. The last one is the pressure to constantly innovate. This is a risk that is inherent throughout the entire technology industry. And sometimes we saw in the past that Grant has been able to get ahead of this risk, ahead of this pressure, but there is possibility that they do not in the future. So our main takeaway is that there are great opportunities, but risk is inherent and you must be willing to take it on. So this is an overview of our primary issues and how we're going to, this is an overview of my internal and external analysis. Moving on to selection criteria. This is going to talk about how we're going to decide the alternatives, which my colleague Gabe is going to get into. Just to give you a brief overview, we're looking at return. Those are profitability measures. We're looking at integrity. That's our image and Grant's image as well. And we're going to look at the investment mandate alignment. That's our own internal strategies and how perhaps this investment aligns or does not align with them. This slide is going to get into how to exactly measure these, but Aiden's going to go over more detail of these measurements, as well as my colleague Kirsten in the implementation.
Thanks, Doctor. So before I get into the two alternatives that we're looking at today, we need to touch on the Melco valuation. So when Grant acquired the Melco Corporation, they purchased it for approximately $12 billion, which represented at the time a 64% premium on their market capitalization. So in order to determine what we believe is a fair valuation for Melco, we looked at a couple different valuation methods. So the first one I'm going to walk you through today is a simple trailing revenues method. And based on the trailing revenues for 2016, which was used for the purchase valuation, that would brought revenues at $727 million, which is a 5 times multiple, which Grant would have been able to pay if there was no increased expectations from analysts in the market. It would have been a valuation of just over $3.5 billion. Now looking back past 2 years, looking at the average from 2015 and the average from 2016, if you look at that, bringing that valuation down to just over $3 billion. So with the trailing revenues, it represents that Grant had to pay a premium in order to acquire Melco. Now, there are other methods, I'm getting into that in a second here. So the next one we're looking at is the valuation using EBITDA, And so to come up with the EBITDA for this, we had to look at a couple items, starting with interest before tax, adding back interest, depreciation, and amortization, as well as normalizing items. So we want to add those normalizing items back in there because those are not expected to recur in the future. So there were some charges for merger and restructuring charges, as well as an investment sale in 2017 that needed to be added back in this case. So that brings the EBITDA down to, just over, or to $410 million. Moving into that, we used a discounted cash flow analysis. We're good. Yes, so we used a discounted cash flow analysis. So we forecasted EBITDA based on the compounded annual growth rate as well as the adjusted operating growth rate. We actually took a more conservative approach because the compounded annual growth rate was just over 55% and the adjusted operating growth rate was approximately 86%. So those are extremely high growth rates for any business, no matter what the industry is. So we took a more conservative value in this case. We used a forecasted growth rate of 25% over our next 3-year period. With that being said, we also used a terminal value. So we incorporated terminal value to expect the cash flows from Melco to continue perpetually in the future. So it's important with accounting to always take into account going concerns. That is how accounting standards are developed. And so we need to incorporate that into our cash flow analysis as well. So with our discounted cash flow analysis, we see a net present value of the Melco acquisition of approximately $6.25 billion. And we also performed a sensitivity analysis too. So with varying growth rates from 10% all the way to 50%, you can see how the net present value of this investment might change over that time period. And so with this being said, we see the Melco acquisition, the actual value, inherent value of that action being $6 billion to Grant. So Grant did overpay with this, and that is evident by the accounting write-downs they've had to incur in the recent years. So with that being said, we also have to look at some accounting improprieties as well. With Melco, there's growing controversy in the market that they could be recognizing revenues too early. Given the sales with value-added resellers, we need to look at how that incorporates with the IFRS 15, which is standard for revenue recognition for public companies. So it's important to ensure that in order to recognize revenue, the following conditions must be met. So we need separately identifiable performance obligations. Price for each obligation can be determined. So if there are different steps in the revenue recognition process, we have to be able to identify and separate them so we can recognize revenue at the correct times as well. And the product or service has been performed or control of ownership has been transferred. So if we are transferring the title of the asset to a value-added reseller, we have to be certain that that item is not going to be returned before we can recognize revenue how we believe return, we'd have to estimate that and deduct that from our revenues at that time. So that being said, I would like to point out 5 value-added resellers. So we saw very high and very suspect returns with these customers based on this listing. So as you can see, there were very high sales of approximately ranging from $702,000 or $354,000 to $866,000 in Q4 of 2016. Then we saw in Q1 of 2017, we saw very high returns from those same value-added resellers. So what this is showing us today is that Melco sold products to these value-added resellers, recognized the revenue in 2016, which inflated the price we had to pay, which inflated analyst estimates because they kept beating analyst estimates. So analysts did not take into account, and that is why the premium we had to pay, or the premium Grant had to pay was so high. So this is evident that it is likely Melco participated in an earnings management technique. While there's flexibility within gaps that allow such techniques, it is often frowned upon to use such a method as well. So there's potential that there could be moving issues with this moving forward if the Melco subsidiary continues this practice. However, we do not see that this would likely continue based on new management. And as I'm going to get my colleague Kirsten and I will get into later, new management practices we would like to initiate at Grant. So with that, I just want to touch on our first alternative today, which was to explore other options. This would be not investing in Grant. The main benefits of this is it stays away from the controversy of Melco. So that does not bring it to Grant. You'll be able to maintain your integrity. And so with that, when we look at the risks, you could miss out on a lucrative investment opportunity. Grant is very highly discounted in the market right now. Their share price has fallen approximately over 60% in the last fiscal year. And so there's a lot of opportunity for Grant. So that's something that could be missed out on with that being said. So when we look at the return for this criteria, we rated that as yellow. So we have a 3-point scale, red for being it does not meet the criteria, yellow for being partially met it, and green for being fully met the criteria. So we can look at the yellow. So with this one, there is no return, so there's no negative or positive return with that. With integrity, it allows our company to stay away from investing in Grant, which is associated with some controversy at the moment, based on the subsidiaries accounting practices. And so our last one was investment in a mandate. So with our investment mandate, we're trying to invest in undervalued, discounted companies in the market. And so this did not mean it because in this case, we're not investing in any company. So moving into our second alternative, which is take an activist approach in investing in Grant. So with this, we've purchased shares of Grant that's currently at a discount in the marketplace. There's a high potential return on investment for this alternative. However, there are risks. As we had Asher and I discussed, the Melco Grant could possibly be invested by SEC for possibly accounting frauds, and it could continue that shares may sell off going forward as well. So when we look at the returns, I'm going to get into a bit more of the financial side of this later. We see that this will bring a positive ROI for our company moving forward. Integrity, we rate this as yellow as there are potential issues. However, the subsidiary is such a small proportion of Grant that we do not see this as being a major risk moving forward. And then again, it's aligned with our investment because we're investing in heavily discounted companies. So looking at the financials for this alternative, we can look at that our initial estimate before the Melco scandal was $30 per share, giving Grant a $62 billion valuation. Now the current market capitalization of Grant is just over $34 billion at a price of $16.51 per share. And so when we look at different earnings measures, so we looked at 3 through 10 times earning multiples that would value Grant somewhere between 21 and $71 billion. And so with that range, and based on the current market capitalization, we see that this is a heavily discounted investment opportunity, and that if we were to purchase 50% of the shares for approximately $5.18 billion based on the current market capitalization and any trading share price in the open market, we would be able to attain a significant stake in Grant that would allow us to take an activist approach, bring change to Grant to make sure that this investment stays profitable in the long run and that Grant is successful. I also ran a sensitivity analysis based on potential share prices that would show based on the return on investment for each level. So Kirsten now is going to touch on this part.
Thank you, Aiden. So I'd just like to reiterate that because this alternative allows us to take advantage of the discounted share price and exciting growth opportunities, that is why we decided to go with the activist approach. So now I would like to touch on some secondary issues that we would like to bring to your attention. Firstly, as my colleague Aiden had mentioned, there was an accounting error in revenue recognition. And since this is an accounting error and not a change in estimate, we need to communicate this to Grant that they need to treat this retrospectively moving forward. So what are the other next steps moving forward? We suggest that you invest in Grant for 15%, as well as get a seat on the board of directors, as this will give you more control and leverage to request more transparency and disclosure from Melco and Grant moving forward to avoid any more of these suspected fraud or accounting error situations. And so in the end, this will result in you being able to extract that value from your investment. So just to touch on how do we avoid this moving forward, any more suspected fraud situations. And so there's 4 very important managerial controls, and those are cultural controls, personnel controls, result controls, and action controls. Where cultural controls are the top of the hierarchy. Those are the most important ones because that's what sets the tone at the top. And so since we're suggesting that you take more of an active leadership role in Grant, in your investment in Grant, we want to make sure that we suggest that you communicate to them to implement a balanced scorecard as a holistic approach to every employee in the organization to avoid this going forward. So this slide, just to touch on the balanced scorecard, it has 4 main key components: learning and growth, internal processes, customers, and ultimately your financials. And so the stronger learning and growth processes you have, the better internal process you have, which will lead to more satisfied customers and increase your financial performance in the end. And these are just a couple examples of how you can measure these moving forward. So now looking at how do you get from where you are right now to where we would like you to be. So in 1 month, continue the reviewing of grants as well as discuss any risk and mitigation strategies with the endowment fund managers. 2 months, begin purchasing on the open market for the 15% of the grant shares. 3 to 6 months, begin the discussions with grant to ensure the proportional representation on the board of directors you have obtained, as well as communicate the suggested implemented balanced scorecard with them moving forward and any measurements that they would like to specifically see going forward. 1+ year, evaluate the investment performance and make any impairments as necessary. So since our recommendation doesn't involve too many implementation costs, I really want to identify the 2 main key costs here. And as Kate had mentioned, that would be the $5.18 billion that you'd be spending on the 15% stake in Grant, as well as we would estimate about $10 million for transaction and legal fees from this recommendation. So now I just want to address some risks and mitigations moving forward. As my colleague Baxter had mentioned, this is a very risky market that you are in. The first one being, what if intent exists? We weren't sure that it was fraud. From the information that we have, we just know that it was an accounting error. So if we find out that it was fraud, we found that the likelihood of this would be medium, the impact would be very high, but a way to mitigate this, we firstly communicate this to your customers, communicate this to your clients. Make sure that you're aware of this and tell them how you are actively responding to it, as well as taking more of a leadership role in implementing those controls and grants to make sure that you avoid this moving forward. Another risk would be that the share price doesn't improve. The likelihood would be low and the impact would be high. And a way to mitigate with this, we would continue doing our due diligence and taking on an active role to better manage Grant and implementing those controls. And lastly, just looking at a human resource risk here, is what if the Grant employees are resistant to this change? We found that the likelihood would be high, the impact would be medium, and a way to mitigate this is to use the Lewin's change model. Unfreeze your organization, communicate the changes to them, and communicate the benefits to them. As well, then implement the changes moving forward and freeze. Make sure that everyone knows that going forward, that tone is set. The tone is set at the top for all accountants, for all employees moving forward, that you are very strict and you want to make sure that you are that they are providing the best quality of work possible. And so now I would like to pass it off to Baxter for a conclusion and summary of our presentation today.
Thanks, Kirsten. Just to go over what we've talked about today. We've identified, of course, America is a land of the free. We've identified the land of the opportunity. But we've shown exactly what this opportunity is, not just some general opportunity, but specific opportunity. Grant systems. We've talked about the analysis of the market. We've talked about the reward. My colleague Aiden went through a financial analysis that's quite thorough. And my colleague Kirsten talked about the risk associated with that reward. Those two go hand in hand. But what we're telling you today is that there is some risk with any opportunity. With any opportunity, there comes reward as well. And we believe that we should take on this risk. And the risk that we're not willing to take on, we can help mitigate through an active role in this investment, through an active role on the board, and an active role in control measures and performance reward incentives. So thank you for listening to our presentation. We'd love to take any questions you may have.
Sure. I proposed it to my board, and you know how the Americans hate the British, right? And the last thing they want to do is invest in shares from a British, part of British company, especially with the sterling going down. How are you, and other shareholders are just regular people. They don't know the numbers, you just explain them, how to explain it, so we take it. And my board members are not, they just want to know how we can convince them. So what action can we take to convince the Americans about the Brits?
That's a hard question, obviously, right? There's always going to be tensions when you're investing in even a different company, or especially one that's in a different country. And I think what we've reiterated time and time again in this presentation is the importance of communication. And so if you want to get them to invest in the Brits, even though they're slightly, they don't want to, I think you need to, again, exactly what Kirsten was talking about, maybe not so specific to the Lumens change model, but you need to unfreeze their perceptions that you should not be investing in British companies, their perceptions that you should only be investing in American companies. Unfreeze those perceptions, communicate the benefits of investing in this British company. Maybe you don't have to go through the exact specific financials, but you can communicate the qualitative benefits. Exactly what I said, maybe you can convince them with a very motivational speech about opportunity. Once you've communicated those benefits, you make those changes, you make that investment. And you freeze those changes and you show them the opportunity, you show them the reward that came from this investment, and maybe in the future you won't have to work so hard to convince them next time.
And just to add on to my colleague Baxter's point there, you could explain to them more specifically that if their perception is strictly under the scope of American investments, that limits their investments. And if they broaden and if they're more open to investing in British companies, then that expands their opportunities and rewards.
So right now, the way I see it is at $16, they still haven't restated the financials or announced potential fraud. So then there's still a lot of negative impact on the stock. At 15%, I'm not convinced that we can do anything to change the company. Why should I invest in Grant instead of something like Apple or Google? It's much safer, guaranteed return.
Yeah, so for sure. So the main reason we would suggest investing in a 50% stake in Grant because of the discount value. As you mentioned, they have not currently written anything more down on this investment, which does pose a risk and could have hurt shareholder values. However, we see since October, the share prices have risen just under $4 from approximately $3.50. It was the lowest was $12.99 in October. So we see shareholder recognition, they're already growing again with the share price. And we see that once we are finally able to leverage the underlying assets, and along with Grant's current assets, we see immense growth opportunities. And while 50% may seem small, large public corporation that will allow for 1 or 2 seats likely on the board, which will allow us to bring in an activist approach in the company to try and get our ideas for change across.
Back to revenue recognition. I know you mentioned it could have been an earnings management technique. Do you think that they recognize revenue correctly, or based on the revenue recognition?
Based on the current criteria with the sales in Q4, returns in Q1, it would have been incorrect because they had it was in the preliminary phases for most of the projects as well, the value-added resource, and so they had no idea on how to estimate returns at that point. So until the returns can be estimated, they should not recognize any revenue in this.
And just to add on to my colleague's point, there was this discussion of is there fraud, is there not fraud? And we talked about, well, it's difficult to prove intent, especially with the limited information that we have. And we talked about perhaps this was a mistake, or perhaps it may have been truly a management technique that was employed on purpose. Is that intent for fraud, or is that intent just for the incentives that exist in the company? And I think that's what we're trying to do at the end with that activist role, is to put in those controls, put in those incentives so that the opportunity for fraud doesn't exist, to make it more difficult. Yes.
Did your valuation take into account the revenue price?
Yes, so in our valuation, based on the discount rate used as well as the growth rates we use for future revenues, that was encompassed in our valuation.
So you did not really have
A certain percentage, yes. Yeah, approximately, based on the 20 transactions we were given, approximately 35% of those resulted in returns in Q1, and so we took a 35% hit in our calls.
Great. Q&A. Thank you.